was in a nearby cabin. It wasn't in the fort, which was about 50 yards away from the fort. So they're about out of gunpowder, and they got one powder keg left, but the unfortunate thing about it is it's in a cabin like 50 yards away from the fort, okay? And you're just not going to walk out the front door of the fort and go get it if you're very sensible. Well, somebody of, one of those 100 patriots probably should have left their post to try to recover the powder keg, because every bullet fired was needed if they're going to survive this thing. Well, they couldn't afford to have any of the 100 leave their post because it left a vulnerable area in the fort. So it just so happened that there was a 16-year-old girl by the name of Betty Zane, who was an innocent victim of this skirmish, and she volunteered to try to recover the powder keg for the militia. How brave is that? How many of you guys have seen Wild Hogs? The movie Wild Hogs. Have you? Remember the bull slap? Okay, we'll talk about that. How many seen it? Okay, so Betty Zane volunteers to recover the powder keg. She takes off running for the cabin. She goes out the front doors of the fort and runs like crazy, hoping that the British and Indians would not shoot at her. Well, she guesses right, and she's not fired upon en route to the cabin. Just like that first guy that snuck up on that bull and slapped him on the rear end, didn't get much of a reaction from the bull because the bull wasn't expecting that. But the second guy that went up and tried it, the bull is now ready, right? He knows he's awake. He's going, whoa, wait till the next guy comes. So that was the same thing here. Once she was in the cabin, she's got a couple of problems. One, she's a 16-year-old girl, no offense, kids, but she could not do what? Pick it up. It was too heavy. Couldn't lift the powder keg. And she's obviously not going to roll it back because those bulls or those enemy know she's coming back out, and she didn't run out there to go to the restroom, they're guessing. You know what I mean? She ran out there for something, and they're not going to let her bring that something back without shooting at her. So once she gets in the cabin, she realizes that the powder keg is far too heavy for her to carry, and she certainly can't roll it back, even if she could. Okay? So what does she do?
Takes part of it.
She does. She takes her apron that she has on, and she opens the keg, and she pours as much as she can in her apron to try to get it back to help those soldiers out. So she opens the keg, she pours as much gunpowder as she can hold in her apron, and she turns around and heads back out of the cabin toward the fort. Well, as I mentioned, by now the British soldiers and Indians know she's up to no good, so they began firing upon her during her desperate race back to the fort. She's fired upon. Well, by a miracle, she does not get hit, and she arrives safely back to the fort with her apron full of gunpowder. Well, she brings enough gunpowder to hold off the siege the rest of the third day. And to be honest with you, finally the Redcoats and Indians just tire and decide, this isn't really worth it, and they depart. So, by a miracle, Betty Zane dodges bullets and arrives safely back to the fort, and she provides enough gunpowder in her apron for those 100 patriots to hold off their enemy for the rest of that third day. Finally, the Redcoats and Indians tire from the fight, and they retreat away. Now, so if you look at history, because of the efforts of Betty Zane, the Patriots prevail in the last battle of the American Revolution. So what happens now? We're done with the Revolutionary War, so what do we need? We need a peace treaty. So that's our next subtopic, which is the Peace Treaty of 1783. Well, negotiations to end the war actually began soon after the surrender of General Cornwallis, even though fighting went on for almost a year. So in October of 1781, they began the negotiations. Now, do these take 5 minutes? Usually it might take several days, maybe even weeks, for people to agree upon what the treaty's going to state. So they began to negotiate the end of the Revolutionary War between Great Britain and America shortly after General Cornwallis surrendered in Yorktown in October of 1781. The treaty was completed on September 3rd, 1783. So they talked a while, and this fighting continued. Okay? And the treaty that was signed on September 3rd, 1783 became known in history as the Treaty of Paris. Now, we don't really care who negotiated on the side of the British, really, but I will tell you the 4 men that were assigned the duty of negotiating for the United States. Some of them are familiar names. I'll let you see if you can guess. Maybe I'll throw a little more extra credit around. But I'll tell you the new names that were picked. 2 of the 4 commissioners, as they were known, to negotiate for the United States in the Treaty of Paris were John Jay and Henry Lawrence. Those are new names, and we will talk a lot more about John Jay later. So John Jay and Henry Lawrence were 2 of the 4 that negotiated. Now, we'll just take a semblance of raise your hand, and we'll see if anybody can guess the other 2. Now, I'm going to have to pull the boss card on Paris and not let her answer this, because I know she needs the points, but I'm not going to, I want to take the competitive spirit out. We're going to limit this to 5 points per time. Okay, we'll start down this row. Correct! Woo!
She was already in France. Makes sense.
Well, see, there's a thinker. Okay, anybody else in that row want to guess who the second person was? How about this row? Well, take a guess. Take a wag. You know what a wag is? Huh?
John Adams.
That is correct. So, Benjamin Franklin, John Jay, John Adams, and Henry Lawrence were the 4 commissioners that were assigned the duty of negotiating for the United States. It's pretty good. Usually it takes longer than that. Now, I'm going to tell you the 3 things that the men gained by the Treaty of Paris for the United States of America. What we got out of it. What's the obvious thing we got? Independence. That's the first thing we gained, was independence from Great Britain. What else did we get? What else would we want? What? Thought somebody said it. What? Money? Well, what's sometimes better than money? What? No?
Money. I
What?
feel like nothing's better than money.
Like get rid of our wars.
Well, that's going to be an issue we're going to talk about. We're going to have to figure that out ourselves. So they're not going to give us money, but what do we want? Because we're the United States of America, and we'd like to expand. Land. So what we got was all the land, look at here, between the Appalachian Mountains and the Mississippi River, from Canada to Florida. Great Lakes, basically. Not Canada so much. We got all the land from the Appalachian Mountains to the Mississippi River, from the Great Lakes to Florida. All that land we received. All land between the Appalachian Mountains and the Mississippi River, east to west, from the Great Lakes to Florida, north to south. That whole area became property of the United States of America. So our 13 colonies are going to expand, are they not? And the last thing we got, it was kind of different, but we wanted it. We got the right to fish in the Gulf of St. Lawrence off the coast of Newfoundland. Now I don't think it's on this map, it's clear up here. But we got the right to fish in the Gulf of St. Lawrence, which is located off the coast of Newfoundland. So as a result of the Treaty of Paris, in 1783, the United States gained 1, independence, 2, all land between the Appalachian Mountains and the Mississippi River from the Great Plains to Florida, and 3, the right to fish in the Gulf of St. Lawrence and off the coast of Newfoundland. And guess what, kids? Revolutionary War is over. So here's what we're gonna do. Monday, we're gonna have a review. Excuse me, Monday we're gonna have a review, and then we're gonna start a video called The Revolutionary War Part 2, so you can see this. And we might have a test Tuesday, depending on how long the video is, we might have one Wednesday. If we have one Tuesday, you'll be online, right? We'll see how it goes, because we got a little farther than I thought we would today. So we'll have a test either Tuesday or Wednesday, and you'll know Monday when that's going to be, okay? Nice job. We're done. We're moving on. We're going to talk about that war debt we're going to owe.